Welcome to AWS Empower India 2024. Please welcome to the stage Pankaj Gupta, Public Sector Leader of AWS India and South Asia.
Namaste India and good morning everyone. How are you all doing today? I am Pankaj Gupta. I lead the public sector business for AWS India and South Asia. First of all, a very warm welcome to the AWS Empower India here in the heart of New Delhi. It is such a pleasure and honor for me to welcome you all, customers, partners, friends, colleagues, to this marquee event of the year. You know, if you look around, we have dreamers, innovators, change makers. You are the real architects of future of digital India. I'm really very excited to be here with all of you today. As APJ Abdul Kalam once said, you have to dream before your dreams can come true. And indeed, here we are, turning our dreams into realities by pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the cloud. With that, I welcome you all once again, and thank you very much for joining us. Now, before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our sponsors. Without you, today's event would have not been possible. We truly appreciate your contribution and commitment to our customers as you help them accelerate their digital transformation journey to the cloud. Talking about today's event, we have more than 25 breakout sessions spread across 5 tracks covering key topics like generative AI, machine learning, data analytics, and a masterclass in AI designed specifically for developers. And please take time to visit Tech Chopal, which is a bustling marketplace of innovative ideas where all your tech problems can get solved. And of course, do join us at 5 p.m. in the evening for a networking reception where you can connect with your industry peers and also participate in the grand quiz to win exciting prizes. But if you see, today is not just a day of sessions. It is a day full of transformation. So please take time to learn, connect, and network with each other and make the most of your day here. 2024, I believe year 2024 has been a landmark year for us Indians. From lifting the T20 Cricket World Cup to displaying incredible grit and determination at the Olympics and Paralympics, we Indians have celebrated one success after the other. But it is not just sports. India is making waves across the board. Talking about India's incredible growth trajectory over the last 75 years of independence, where India's GDP has grown by 100x. Our per capita income has increased by astonishing 500x. Today, India stands as the fastest growing large economy and the most exciting market in the world. But as much as I'm amazed by India's incredible growth over the last few decades, one thing that really excites me today is the theme of our event, Viksit Bharat 2047. It is not just a vision. It is a powerful goal to transform India into a fully developed nation by 2047, marking 100 years of our independence. Since we are talking about building a better India, I want to talk about the mission of AWS India public sector team and what does this team really stand for. We want to make a positive impact to the life of every citizen of India. When I say every citizen, we are talking about 1.4 billion people through AWS engagements. That's the first part. The second part is we want to help India achieve its global potential as a digital nation that strives to be the technology sandbox of the world. I know this is a little long mission statement. Let me help you demystify it. Over the years, since we have been working with government departments, central government, state and local government, education institutes, not-for-profit organizations, we've got the fortunate opportunity to work very closely with them and build and scale some of the world's largest population scale platforms. I'm sure all of us have heard about COVID, right? COVID is today the world's largest COVID vaccination system that has done more than 2.2 billion vaccinations or 1.2 billion registrations. But did you know, COVID was also the world's fastest growing tech platform that amassed 200 million users in 4 months and 300 million users in 5 months. And by the way, all this got enabled on AWS using our native services without a single second of downtime. We all know the COVID is over, but the good news for COVID is that it is getting integrated with other health platforms like reproductive child health, maternal child health, and getting evolved into something called Universal Immunization Platform, or UWIN. Government is looking at adding 12 more vaccines, diphtheria, BCG, tetanus, polio, to the same platform. Every year in India, there are 100 million children. Children in the age of 0 to 6 years, pregnant women, lactating mothers, who needs to be vaccinated. But we do not have any digital vaccination record for them. Going forward, government will be able to create a cradle-to-grave longitudinal health record of a child from the day of its birth and solve problems like malnutrition and high infant mortality rate in India. Isn't it amazing? While this is just one example of how AWS is powering India's digital transformation journey, but our commitment goes beyond individual initiatives. Let me talk about AWS investments. AWS has invested more than $3.7 billion in India between 2016 to 2022 to build our Mumbai region. And we have announced plans to invest an additional $12.7 billion in India by 2030 to expand our cloud infrastructure. With these investments, it is estimated it will contribute $23.3 billion to India's GDP and will create 131,700 full-time jobs annually. Now that the stage is set, I want to take the opportunity to introduce our first guest speaker for the day, Dr. Werner Vogels, VP and CTO of Amazon.com. While he does not need any introduction, but let me still do my part. Dr. Werner is a tech luminary, one of the few architects behind the success of AWS. He is very passionate about bringing a positive change in the world by fostering young businesses and entrepreneurs who are solving some of the world's hardest problems through technology. In fact, some of you might also know him from his annual tech predictions or from his Now Go Build video series, where he travels around the world to unearth innovative startup stories. With that, Alexa, can we have Dr. Werner on the stage, please?
Please help me welcome to the stage Dr. Werner Vogels, Chief Technology Officer of Amazon.
Namaste. Thank you all for coming here today. I want to thank, of course, the organization today for actually having me here. It's quite an honor. I spent the last week in Bangalore meeting with many young innovative companies from there, and also quite a number of let's say, public good organizations. I think it is crucial today that we're not only applying our technology to, let's say, build the next spam filters, but that we are looking at some of the hardest problems in this world. Yeah, if you look at the sustainability goals of the UN, the expectation is that by 2050, we'll have another 2 billion people on this planet. How are we going to feed them? How are we going to make sure they have a sustainable economic future? How are we going to make sure that they have healthcare? All of these are crucial. But also, I think if I look at sort of making sure that, you know, the individual cultures of different people are actually still celebrated. For example, in Bangalore, I met a young business called Swende, and actually this is an image, and actually the QR code will take you to the Now Go Build episode about Swende. Their goal is to take age-old art in India that is slowly disappearing and applying it to modern manufactured goods, such as, you know, you want to have a unique laptop sleeve, you want to have nice lamps, all uniquely made for you. And the real goal, next to actually saving this age-old art, is to make sure that those artists actually have a new income. Many of those are women. And they are taking care of making sure that women have a sustainable future and independent income here in India, and that's crucial. But also if I look, for example, at a company like Namayatri, who actually cut out the middleman between drivers and people who want to go somewhere, making sure that tuk-tuk drivers actually go from an income from 400 rupees to 1,000 rupees. And these impacts are significant. But we cannot do this if we do not at the same time keep cost and sustainability in mind. So I want to talk to you a bit about a little bit of the history behind cloud, but also most importantly, hopefully give you a number of architectural principles or thinking points about how we can make sure that while we're doing all this innovation, we not break the bank when it comes to cost, and most importantly, the resources on this planet. Now, we go back, one of the things that actually really drive the development of cloud was the fact that, before cloud, we were all driven by these hardware constraints. If I think about Amazon, the retailer, each year we saw significant growth, and we were pretty good in sort of anticipating how much growth we would see. As such, I had to make sure that we had sufficient hardware to make sure that we could serve our customers. Now, if our estimations were wrong, and we saw much more growth, our customers would be unhappy because they would get a bad experience. If our expectations were wrong on the other side, and we didn't see as many customers, my CFO would be really angry at me. But what happened always in these situations, something unexpected would happen. There would be, just before Black Friday, a team would come to us and would say like, oh, you know what, we have this brilliant idea from this new promotion. And you would go like, you don't have any capacity for that, we didn't anticipate this. But for some reason, we always made it work. We always found a way. Because these constraints, they breed creativity. They breed thinking. How can we live within these constraints? And we as engineers, and I hope there are quite a few engineers in the audience, we thrive on this. We thrive on the fact that we can be creative, that we can find new ways to make things happen within these constraints. Now, of course, there are also a lot of downsides to these constraints. And then cloud came and it removed these constraints, because now suddenly we had unlimited capacity at our fingertips. We could finally build those things that we always wanted to build. And most importantly, we could move much faster because we no longer constraints. And you know what? If you remove constraints, we as humans have this way from, if the pendulum is here, we'll swing it to the other side and no longer think about those constraints at all. Moving fast, innovation, all those things became way more important. And even though we gave very good advice to our customers to keep cost in mind, now they kind of ignored that advice because competition and moving fast was way more important. In 2012, we had the first big user conference called reInvent. I gave a whole range of principles that I think people should keep in mind when they're building on the cloud. One of those was, I was excited by the fact that you could now architect with cost in mind, because after all, you had to pay for each resource that you had to use. Customers ignored it. They ignored it almost to, let's say, 2-3 years ago, when suddenly people said, yeah, we've gone for all this innovation, and we continue to build fast, and we know how to do this. But I now have these 2 different search services on my system, and one is twice as expensive as the other. Why is that? And of course, the macroeconomic climate changed as well, which meant that, suddenly cost control became much more important in many companies. So, well, I'd like to talk to you today about sort of that, what have we seen, what have we learned from ourselves, but also from many of our customers, and give you some advice around that. Let me first talk about one of our customers. It's called PBS, the public broadcasting system in the US. After all, they're a non-profit organization and money is tight. However, in their old system on premise, they were traditional. I don't know, but I assume you know Sesame Street. And Sesame Street had its 40th birthday at some moment, and of course their streaming servers were massively overloaded. Nobody could get any frame out on their screens. That prompted them to move to the cloud, although they didn't re-architect. They just did a lift and shift. Now, if things didn't scale in your own data center, lift and shift doesn't suddenly make it massively scalable on the cloud. They did do some fun things. They made use of a system that we had at the time called OpsWorks, which allowed you to do time-based scaling. So they could anticipate at 7 o'clock when this new documentary would launch, and they could anticipate how much customers they would be seeing there. So they had some scalability, but definitely not the on-demand scalability that you would need. Remember, scalability is not only about scaling up. It is as important to be able to scale down, to no longer hold those resources that you not need. So we helped them go through this re-architecture phase, and they started using S3 and Kinesis and CloudFront and all ECS on Fargate and all this, and they were able to reduce their streaming costs by 80%, which for an organization that has very limited financial resources is really crucial for them. What is also the case is that one of the things that I've learned from them, because cost was so important to them, they actually had one of their VPs who was a champion for cost on AWS. Had assigned an individual executives that was in charge of making sure that cost was integrated into everything that they did. Now, cost is one thing, but I believe there is another freight train that is coming our way and that we will not be able to escape. And that's sustainability. Yeah? As much as we love all these new innovations that we're doing and all these big systems that we're building, all of this means nothing if we're ruining the planet at the same time for its resources. And in absence of us being able to give you exact milligram CO2 used or created for each computation that you do, on AWS, cost is a pretty good proxy for sustainability. After all, at AWS, you pay exactly for the resources that you've used. So you can treat cost as a proxy for sustainability. So throughout this presentation, if I talk about cost, you might as well hear sustainability. Some organizations actually not even that terribly much concerned about cost, but are concerned about sustainability. A company like WeTransfer. So WeTransfer, very simple company, a very long-running company on AWS already. And what they do, they're very large files. You can upload it into S3. These are files that are too big to be sent by email or anything like that for collaboration. Many people in the media are using this service. They are what's called a certified B Corp. And it is a company that means they have the highest standards for environmental, social, and fiscal transparency. So they continuously re-architect their system to reduce their energy usage. Yeah, and about 80 million people are using that platform each month, so this is not a sort of small kind of effort. And they've been able to reduce their emissions by 78% by careful re-architecting their systems. One of those things, for example, being have smart defaults. We, as users of systems, if there are 4 choices that you have, in general, we just pick the default. That's just human behavior. Their way is sort of making smart defaults such that they actually could keep files not as long on their servers as that they would have before, and actually be able to reduce their emissions significantly. Now, much of these sort of experiences over time that I've had and that our teams have created, I've put together in sort of a framework which I call the Frugal Architect. There's a website on this as well, and we do many interviews with companies and things like that and share their experiences on this. And so they're basically my observations of the last 20 years as CTO of Amazon. Yeah, and I put them together in sort of categories or laws, if you would call them. These are, of course, not legal laws or anything like that. It's just my advice to you. And so I think the first category of these laws is actually the most important one. That's the design part. I think that you should treat cost as a non-functional requirement. Yeah? Non-functional requirements are those parts of your system that do not have to deal with any of the business logic that you would like to build. Yeah? These are some of the typical non-functional requirements that you would normally see. Yeah, security, compliance, performance, availability, all of these are decisions that you need to make about your system, but it have nothing to do with the business logic that you're building. I believe that cost and sustainability should be part of those as well. You should take cost into account when you're building your systems. I actually even think that cost, sustainability, security, compliance, and accessibility are non-negotiable. These are not things you want to trade off for. Non-negotiable trade-offs. Now, one of the things that I hated when I was CTO of Amazon without having access to AWS was the fact that if I had to deal with IT vendors, I always had to make very long-term predictions of how much capacity I would need to use. Why? Because that was the only way I could drive my costs down, make very long-term contracts. And believe me, at Amazon, predicting 5 years out is almost impossible. So I always had to overscale in 5 years. And then I had to write a very big check up front. Yeah? And once I'd handed that check to the vendor, they didn't care anymore. They'd been paid. Yeah? And as such, I always felt that the vendor was in charge. They were almost blackmailing me. And so when we started AWS, we wanted to make sure, as being the Earth's most customer-centric company, that our IT services were also customer-centric. A crucial part of that is the pay-as-you-go model. Yeah? We have no longer contracts that keep you onto our platform, and definitely, you don't have to pay up front. The thing that you do is you pay for each of the resources that you've used. The pay-as-you-go model in all of this is crucial. It also allows you to sort of really measure and predict your cost in the future. Now, for us at AWS, it was crucial that when we actually started building our pricing models, that this was cost following, that our cost exactly matched the kind of resources that we have been using for you. And actually, the first big service that we launched, Amazon S3, the simple storage service, we made a mistake in that. Because intuition for us had said like, oh, we're building a storage service, what will our cost be? Storage, amount of bytes used, and network transfer. And funny enough, one of our first customers for S3 was actually a company that was building thumbnails to show on eBay. They literally had millions of these thumbnails, stored them on S3, and then transferred them using S3 to eBay whenever they needed to display it. There was hardly any storage cost, because these thumbnails were really small, and also hardly any networking cost. Yet, there were millions of requests for these. And so we quickly started realizing that we needed to learn a lot more about how our customers were using our systems, because we had another dimension of cost that we were not charging our customers for. And that was the number of requests. It's probably the only time that we've changed our financial model towards our customers. Yeah? Mostly because we had made this mistake. Customers understood that, because we really want to make sure that our costs reflect the resources that you've been using. Pretty good also if you need to think about sustainability. Later on, when we were really much more proficient in building our financial models, we launched, for example, DynamoDB. We launched them with 2 different financial models on reads. You can get an eventual consistent read. Yeah, under the covers, DynamoDB runs a quorum. Let's say there's basically 3 nodes that store the data for you. You want an eventual consistent read, you can read from any of those 3 nodes. 1 read. And as such, it costs you 1 unit. If you want a strong consistency read, then you need to read from 2 of the nodes, which means 2 reads, twice as expensive. Yeah, so we are exactly showing you with our cost model what kind of resources we're using under the covers. Well, with all of this, I hope that you take away that you should be considering cost at every step, and especially in the design phase. Make sure that you keep those costs in mind. The second of these design decisions that you need to take is that you need to make sure that your costs align with your business. Yeah, and many years ago, I wrote an article for sort of startups, because I think they are the ones that are struggling with this most. Yeah, that you have to figure out what is the dimension over which I'm going to make money. And then you have to make sure that your costs go over exactly the same dimension. If your costs, if your income goes over here, but your costs are over another dimension, yeah, you're pretty sure that you as a business will not be successful from a financial point of view. You have to align your cost and your revenue. And it's crucial. Now, if you become successful, that's a great story. Because you can often use economies of scale to make sure that your costs rise less than that your revenue is. And if you are architected right, of course. Now, I've seen quite a few companies making mistakes in this area. This is actually a graph from a young business a number of years ago. They built these MiFi devices. This was before we had universal 4G that everybody had on their phone. So basically, it gave you a Wi-Fi device. You could buy a data plan on it. And they started off with actually selling 10 or 20 gigs every time. You could buy them, and whenever you run out, you buy some new one. And it's actually good business, because most people actually didn't completely use all of their data. But many of the customers who ask him that it's such a bothersome approach, having to buy this data ever again, can't we just get an unlimited plan? Yeah? Now, remember, whenever you think about unlimited, make sure you put that person in a dark closet and lock the door. Yeah? There is no such thing as unlimited. It then becomes free. What happened for this company is that, you know, they thought they had a really good idea about the maximum amount of data that people were using, which was by constraints, because they were capped. Yeah? Because as soon as they actually introduced this unlimited plan, which was much more expensive, people started watching 24 hours of Netflix over their mobile device. Yeah? Boom. Company went out of business because of this. Yeah? So make sure you understand that your revenue and cost need to grow over exactly the same dimension. And you can actually play with this. This is a famous drawing from Jeff Bezos when he started Amazon. He was always talking about flywheels. Now, the biggest flywheel in retail is that thing in the middle. It's called selection, which is the number of products in your catalog. The higher the number of products in your catalog, the higher the likelihood is that customers start with you because they know they can find what they're looking for. So it's crucial for e-commerce to grow the number of SKUs in your catalog. To grow that, customer experience improves, drives more traffic, makes more sellers interested in coming on your site and selling their goods, which then improves the size of the catalog, and that drives the whole thing, becomes a flywheel. With growth then, you can get lower cost, and with that you can lower your pricing, and you get into another flywheel. And then you add convenience with it, which is how fast you can deliver. It's also faster. It also becomes a new flywheel. So these business decisions and technology decisions need to go hand in hand. Remember, we're not building technology just for the sake of technology. We're building technology to support our business. And sometimes it's hard to figure out this cost up front. One of the moments that we had a really hard time with is when we decided to build Lambda. You, as customers, had told us, oh, we love S3 and SQS and all these services where you take care of reliability and availability and security, where we don't have to do that. Why can't you do that for compute? We still need to run these virtual servers, these EC2 instances. Okay, so we knew that we wanted to build Lambda. We also knew how we wanted to charge for it. Amount of memory held for a certain period, and the amount of CPU used. That seemed reasonable. Yeah? We had no idea how to do that. Because mostly important in all of this is not just these costs, Yeah, it is also security. We needed to make sure that our customers, the execution of those functions, would be isolated from each other. So that was non-negotiable. Security was non-negotiable. We also needed to get this in the hands of our customers because we didn't know, this is completely new, we didn't know how they were going to use this. So insights are crucial as well. So we decided to take a little bit of a risky approach, namely that because the smallest instance that we had available with isolation was a T2 instance. However, they were massively overscaled for each of those functions. So you run multiple of these functions over the T2s, and you could run, basically, you would take each function and put them into a T2, and it was way too big. We were losing money on this. We knew that, by the way. This was a conscious decision of creating technical debt. And if you look at sort of the usage of those, all of these T2s were underused. And you could do some trickery, for example, execution of the same function from the same customer. You could run them inside the same isolation boundary, the T2s, which then immediately got you into the other problem, because most of these functions actually are triggered synchronously, sort of in lockstep with each other, and then you get hotspots over your whole system. It was a nightmare. We basically had created technical debt that we really needed to pay off. Remember, if you create technical debt, it's just like taking a mortgage. If you don't pay off your mortgage, the bank comes knocking on your door. In this case, Andy Jassy and Jeff Bezos will come knocking on my door saying, really? Why are you spending this much money on something that we don't get actually any return for? So at the same time, we were building, in parallel with actually creating and getting this feedback from our customers, we were building this system called Firecracker. And Firecracker was micro VMs based on KVM hardware virtualization. And that allowed us now suddenly to go much smaller, to actually get everything that we needed. Very small execution environment, strong isolation boundaries, and a much better way of actually managing all these functions running on our platform. And it allowed us to actually do a lot of innovation next to it. You think about Fargate that sits underneath our container environments for which you no longer need to actually manage the compute clusters, also driven by Fargate. Fargate is open source, anyone can use this. Crucial in that is that when you build your architecture, you have to think that in the future you may have to change things. And often my rule of thumb is that every order of magnitude change in your usage will probably drive you to review your architectures. And of course, just solid good management is pay off your debt. And many of these sort of things that we've seen, there's a lot of trade-offs to be made. Some of these trade-offs I've said are non-negotiable. Security, for example. We're not going to trade off security against anything else. If you don't make security your number one priority, you will be actually putting your customers and your business at risk. So having these trade-offs, and for example, one of the things where you often want to trade off for is availability and resilience. Are we running this in a single AC? Are we running this in multiple ACs? Are you actually doing this with regional disaster recovery so you can fail over to another region? All these different choices you can make. Each of them comes with a different cost. And as such, when you make these trade-offs up front, it's not only by telling if you're in the interaction with your business partners, you have to ask, how much are you willing to pay for this? Is this component really needs to be 11 nines available? Or, is this something that you can just do some simple manual disaster recovery for? That's really important. By the way, Amazon Builders Library has lots of these articles in there that will help you sort of think differently about these kind of trade-offs. So trade-offs, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And we also have to keep in mind that it's not just about cost, it's also about sustainability. Is it really necessary that every one of your every one of your services has this 100% availability? Maybe you're willing to give up some in exchange for lower cost and a better use of the planet. And sustainability, by the way, also has this sort of as a shared responsibility model. We are responsible for data centers and our services. AWS, or Amazon, is the largest purchaser of renewable energy in the world. Yeah? And by 2025, AWS will be 100% on renewables. That's our task. Yeah, we invest in all these different solar and wind farm projects. We invest a lot in storage of renewables. All of that is crucial if we really want to make sure that while we are driving this massive digital innovation, we also are good stewards of this planet. So also, Nubank is another customer, for example, that has taken this at heart, where there is a single individual, a single executive that is in charge of managing cost and sustainability on AWS. Now, if I think about sort of the second section, this is all about measurement. Yeah? You think about how do you measure, how do you make sure that you know all these things. Yeah? After all, if you don't measure, yeah, you don't know what kind of cost you experience or where your costs are going. This is a very funny story of my hometown, Amsterdam. In 1972, there was this oil crisis. Don't know if you remember that. A number of you weren't even born yet, I know that. But I was, and I remember these carless Sundays where no cars were allowed to be driven just to keep sort of the amount of resource usage under control. They also did a study there because some houses in Amsterdam, they were remarkably similar, but they were using 50% more energy. And they tried to figure that out. Yeah? So some of these, and this discrepancy actually turned out to be about how do we measure. Some of these houses, the ones that are using less energy, were actually the ones that had their meters in the hallway, which you would see. The houses that were using more energy had their meters in the basement, which you would not always see. So make your cost and your measurements explicit. That's crucial. And what kind of cost are we thinking about digital systems? You know, cost per request, the transitive cost if you have a service-oriented architecture, how many services are you using? All of these things are important. You may have all these different UX features and all these back-end services. You need to make sure this feature, how much is that actually costing me? Measure that. Yeah, cost per request. And cost per request will actually be going down. You know, after all, we give you new hardware every time, better sort of capacity, and as such, your cost per request should be going down over time. And especially if you think about sort of how do all these services work together. Yep. This is an example of the microservices that make up Amazon.com. Each dot is a separate microservice. And the yellow lines there are one hit on one of the pages on Amazon.com, and it includes using all these other services. You need to know how much. Yeah? And you also need to know how much it actually contributes to your effectiveness as a business. We all know that faster web pages drive conversion, but there is a diminishing point of return. And you also have to realize sort of what the understanding the value of new features. Now, if you add new features over time, you have to make sure that sort of your cost may actually run over the same dimensions. Yeah, and make sure that you understand exactly where those diminishing returns are. So, figure out for your business, how does your meter look like? Where do you put it? Some of my customers actually have put big screens in their development environment where this cost is made explicit. Where engineers, if they go home at night and they switch off their development environment, they see the cost going down. Yeah? It's a big motivator for that. And most importantly, cost-aware architectures implement cost controls. Architectures are not one fixed thing. You need to make sure you can tune your architectures, build those tunable models. Yeah? For example, if on a website you have all these different components, and at some moment you see sort of where one of the components is not performing well, can you actually just switch it off? Yeah? Make sure you've implemented those switches to turn off features, to control cost and sustainability. For that, it is very important that you decompose your system into different, what I call tiers. Yeah? If you look at Amazon Retail, there are things that are in tier 1, things that always need to work. Search, browse, shopping cart, checkout. Those things just need to work. Without that, system is dead in the water. Yeah? And then there's the tier 2, things that actually really contribute to customer success, customer finding what they're looking for. Similarities, recommendations, reviews, for example. And then there are the tier 3s that are sort of nice to have. Yeah? And so the nice to haves are in general, for each of those tiers, you may make different resilience decisions. Tier 1 needs to work always. Needs to be replicated over 3 different AZs at least. Because if you lose an AZ, customers should still be using your site. You may actually decide to give up on tier 3 in that particular case. Yeah, but if you haven't decomposed it and haven't converted into tiers, you can't make these decisions. Yeah? And so these trade-offs you have to make continuously. You decide for, by the way, it's not us as engineers that decide how this availability goes. It's a decision that needs to be made to the business. We need to give the business these levers to either switch off components, to throttle some of these things, or to just show less details. Is it really necessary to send an 8 megabyte image over as a header for a web page where the browser immediately sort of converts that down to much less pixels? Yeah? Don't be wasteful in that sense. Yeah? Make sure that you give your business partners access to these decisions. We implement the tools. They actually need to make those decisions. And that's crucial. Give controls to your customers. It shouldn't be us as engineers who decide what the reliability of this particular tier needs to be. It's your business that needs to do this. After all, we are building technology for your business. So crucial in all of that is that you have to establish these tiers. Yeah, you have to know what you're talking about and what you can do with your business. Optimizing is also something, you know, there's this famous quote about premature optimization. Yeah, don't start optimizing too early. But you need to measure to be able to optimize. Yeah, and whether you do that through some of the simple steps and using different tools, you need to be able to eliminate digital waste. Why would we actually leave digital waste around? We don't do it in our daily lives. Yeah? Why do we do it in our digital lives as well? And there's many different approaches that you can do. You can stop using some particular things. You can just stop it. The number of engineers that go home at night and leave that development environment running in EC2 actually are, you know, you can't count them on 2 hands. There's quite a few things, just stop them. Or right sizing is also important. Find the right CPU or to use. Gravitons are actually significantly more energy efficient than any of the other instance types that we have. You want to do training and inference? Use training and inference that are 30% more energy efficient than any of these other big GPU systems that you have out there. And then just reduce usage, shift it, reduce some things. You know, make smart choices around which environment you're using. Profile. You know, continue to use profiling to understand where your costs inside your system are going. This is a small example I want to give about sort of one of the services inside Amazon. We were profiling that one, and we are expecting we had a sort of intuition what we would see, but however, we saw that network communication was massively impacting the cost of the service. And I know quite a few of you may not be engineers. I'm going to do something risky. I'm going to show you some code. Yeah? This is actually pretty good code. Yeah? There is a package coming in, and if it doesn't meet an exception will be thrown if it meets some really stringent conditions. The idea is that exceptions are really exceptions because they're expensive. While we're running it, it turns out that exception actually becomes the normal case. 95% of these packages actually don't meet the condition. So by just changing a very simple line in this code, we're able to reduce the network cost significantly. But you can only do this when you've built a system. Yeah? And you need to make sure that you can continuously optimize your systems. You do this by measuring and continuously measuring. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is one that is very close to my heart. Yeah? Sometimes you're successful and you think, you know what, I'm just going to continue to do this because it worked well the last time. Yeah? Can I do it again now? This is one of the most beautiful quotes I know about in computer science. Rear Admiral Grace Hopper was a famous person who actually can be seen as sort of the grandmother of modern programming languages. He was a great, great architect. The most dangerous phrase in the English language is, we've always done it this way. Yeah? And remember, how fast is technology changing around us? It's ridiculous. Engineers coming out of school, do they know everything about deep learning and unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning and LLMs and transformers and vector databases? No. Our world is changing radically fast. And so we need to continuously look at sort of our technologies. Are they meeting modern day constraints around cost and sustainability? This is one of these things. We're a Java shop. Yeah, and you're proud of that. We're great at Rails. Well, think about something that will use a lot of resources. Rails is definitely it. Oh, and last time we built something that was successful, we'll build it again like this. One of the things that you have to keep in mind, really, is that the cost to build systems is actually quite small in comparison to the cost that it takes to operate systems. Systems need to run much longer than that we're building it. And so, for example, one of the most important choices you can make today about building your systems is which programming language you use. This is research about the energy usage of the same code in different programming languages. Python is 75 times as energy inefficient as Rust. That means that if you are today building in Python or in Java or Ruby or any of those interpreted / garbage collected languages, you are wasting 50 to 75% more resources than you should. And of course, we say, oh, Rust, C++ and C, but they're not secure languages. But Rust is. Actually, the security features of Rust are superior to many of the other languages. There is no reason today to continue to waste resources in using things because you've always done it like that. Today, technology is moving so fast that we need to continue to use our brain, and we need to continue to learn about new capabilities that are available to us because cost and sustainability are crucial. Yeah? This confirms your beliefs, the things that you always thought, this is how we do things. Yeah? Make sure that you actually make choices about technology that are crucial for cost and sustainability. Now, going back, because I would like us to reintroduce these constraints. Why? Because constraints breed creativity. That's what we humans are really good at. Yeah? Your AI programming assistant is really good in doing things as they always were. We are the creative ones. We are the ones that actually know how to use new technologies in a way to solve really hard problems. Now, with all of that, if you're more interested in sort of becoming a frugal architect yourself and, helping your company save cost and help save the planet by using less resources, go visit the Frugal Architect. And as always, with that, go build. Thank you.
Pankaj Gupta back on stage once again.
Thank you, Werner, for such an insightful session and for introducing the frugal architect mindset, which is all about maximizing value rather than just about minimizing cost. Since we are talking about frugal innovation, let me speak about one great example of frugal innovation at scale and the work we are doing with National Health Authority of India, or NHA. NHA has a mission to make healthcare affordable and accessible for 1.4 billion people in India, that is enabling universal health coverage. We worked with NHA to migrate and modernize one of their core applications called Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, or PMJ as it is called, on AWS native services. PMJ is also the world's largest government-funded health insurance scheme which provides free health insurance of up to 5 lakh rupees per family per year to 550 million poor and vulnerable people in India. Talking about the tech stack, this is a behemoth enterprise application with key modules like beneficiary identification system, hospital empanelment system, and even a transaction management system, all deployed on AWS. Using AWS services, this platform is processing today 1.2 million claims per month with 2.5 million documents. PMJ is also running their fraud analytics solution and even a central data lake on AWS, which is helping them identify fake claims in real time. Talking about the impact of this platform on the citizens of our country, this has already done more than 70 million hospitalizations worth $11.2 billion. It has generated more than 350 million PMJ ID cards and onboarded a strong network of 30,000 public and private hospitals. Not just that, but did you know every year in India, there are 60 million citizens who are thrown into the clutches of poverty as they are unable to afford high out-of-pocket medical expenses for secondary and tertiary hospitalization. But now, with PMJ, they will be able to get free and cashless health insurance of up to 5 lakh rupees per year. Last week, government also announced its plans for PMJ to include all elderly citizens of our country above the age of 70 years, irrespective of their income status. With now, I can get my parents involved in the scheme. I believe this is a great example of enabling universal health coverage, ensuring no one is left behind in the country. Staying on healthcare, I want to talk about another key solution built by one of our partners called Periwinkle for cervical cancer screening for women in rural India. India today accounts for 26% of the global cervical cancer deaths in the world. This is a big issue, right? Using AWS technology, Periwinkle was able to build an AI-based Smart Scope CX solution that empowers rural health workers to conduct quick and efficient screenings of cervical cancer under 2 minutes, literally benefiting more than 200,000 women in India, saving their lives. Don't you think this is again a great example of bridging the divide between the urban and rural India and making healthcare inclusive and equitable? Now, since we are talking about impact and innovation at scale, let me take the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Pankaj Dixit, CTO of Government e-Marketplace. Dr. Pankaj will talk about the latest innovations at GeM, as GeM is expected to be the world's largest public procurement system. Alexa, could you please play the video and invite Dr. Pankaj on the stage?
GeM, the government e-marketplace revolutionizing procurement in India. It's a one-stop shop for central ministries, state departments, and public sector enterprises.
We have engaged with GeM extensively over the past few years in their modernization agenda and generative AI initiatives. GeM has recently launched a generative AI-enabled chatbot named GeMAI for its public procurement platform to help reduce the load on their help desk and improve ease of doing business for 2.1 million sellers and 370,000 buyers.
Powered by Amazon Bedrock. This generative chatbot offers various capabilities, from answering questions to providing users with enhanced, intuitive experience. Bedrock provides a secure, fully managed service to access top AI models, enhancing user interactions with cutting-edge technology. Today, GeM becomes the first public procurement platform to adopt generative AI-based chat technology that leverages the confidence of AWS concurrency, scale, security, and unmatched reliability. GeMAI is revolutionizing user experience with AI-powered business intelligence, dashboards, and fraud analytics. This is a significant milestone, and it's just the start of a much larger transformation. Get ready for the next wave of AI.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Pankaj Dixit, Chief Technology Officer of Government Marketplace.
Namaskar and good afternoon. I'm Dr. Pankaj Dixit. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Government Marketplace. For those who may not be too familiar with what the Government Marketplace is about, it's the Amazon for the public sector and the central government ministries and state departments and the cooperatives and now even panchayats. Millions of sellers come and meet on our marketplace. So we run the G2B marketplace where all the purchasing happens for the central ministries. 2 million products, more than 300 services, and we are today the second largest public procurement platform in the world. Now, why are we doing what we are doing? So if you see each of these reasons that are listed here are sufficient enough. But I'd like to point out the most important one. If you see, the information asymmetry that happened prior to having a common platform for procurement led to an entry barrier. And that entry barrier hit the small SMEs and MSMEs the most. So what we are doing through this government e-marketplace is we have democratized public procurement. And besides the cost savings, the time efficiency, the reach and inclusivity, and the transparency that we have provided, the most important part is that provided reach. So a tender which is published in Delhi today can be responded to by somebody sitting in Guwahati or in Tamil Nadu or in Gujarat. And that's the most important part. It's not limited to a coterie or a set of people who know somebody or who have approach and the information. Now, studies, besides the advantages that I just showed, studies by eminent bodies like the World Bank and the academia institutes have shown that every purchase or every transaction that happens on GeM results in almost a 9 to 10% of cost benefit. And this cost benefit goes to the exchequer, that is the government treasury. In the last 6-7 years that the portal has been operational, we have already crossed a cumulative GMV of more than $120 billion. And if you count the 10% benefit that goes, that means $12 billion has been the benefit to the treasury and our taxpayers' money. Interestingly, of these $120 billion worth of GMV, 30 billion worth of orders were placed to the small sellers. That's the advantage that I was just talking about. In the last financial year itself, we have done a gross merchandise value worth $48 billion. The year past, we did about $24 billion, and the year before that was about $13 billion. So if you just look at the last 3 years, we've been doubling our GMV by the year. And like I said, we are the second, but we are snapping and we are breathing down the neck of the one who is above us. Now, we keep our focus on what our customers want and what our users want. And if you look at the Bottom left corner, direct purchase, bids, L1 buy, and PPP. These are all the products and features available to our users. For small value purchases and transactions, let's say below 50,000 or lakh or up to 10 lakhs, we provide a direct checkout facility, and that works just like an Amazon or other marketplaces. And we keep the users at the center of our activities all the time. Now, while this slide might look a little busy, but what I want to highlight here is look at the numbers of bids and tenders published per day and the participations. So if you have these kinds of volumes and transactions and users who come to your platform, the responsibility that we are given becomes even more. And our focus, like I said, is to the customers. We integrate with more than 100 entities through hundreds of APIs, and it's our endeavor to keep all the integrations running and all the systems available all the time. Now, keeping the customer in mind and the scale of our operations, we have to grow, and the growth path we have is most challenging. We needed to scale up, and to scale up, the best partner that we can find and where we can go is obviously the cloud. We can rig up VMs, we can increase our memory on the fly, and the need for the scale is already there. We have the customer at the focus. So what the vision that we can put for ourselves is we have to digitize, we have to automate, and we have to transform. And with this new generative AI that is there, we also have to learn and repeat this cycle. Only then we shall be able to do justice to what our users and customers want. We streamline processes, we improve efficiency, and we want to enhance the user experience on a day-to-day basis, on an ongoing basis. And we collaborate. We like to collaborate with our partners, we like to collaborate internally, and we like to collaborate with our users who use our platform. And with the interest of the users in mind itself, this is our portal, and what we have worked with and partnered with AWS in the last few months is create a generative AI-based chatbot to give the users a better experience when they come to our portal. I will be playing a short 1-minute clip in the next slide. I would like you to pay attention to the first few seconds where you'll see a erstwhile old version of the chatbot, which used to be menu-driven, and it had a fixed amount of answers and responses it could give, and limited in our interactions. And thereafter comes the GeMAI chatbot, the few video clip that you saw earlier. So on the left-hand side, what you see right now is the static chatbot that we had earlier. And you see there's a menu that is thrown up to the user, and he has to click one of those. Oftentimes, if you want to talk about some words known to you, but it doesn't respond. Now look at what the GeMAI's capability we have obtained. It is conversational. You can type simple English languages. You can type keywords. Your spellings could be wrong, but it responds. And this is the beauty, and this is the kind of product that we want to build for our users. When I was a child, I used to see those sci-fi movies or even the Infinity Wars that you see, and you see, the screens and where you have similar text running. It gives me so much joy to see this streaming on my platform and something of as a product that you've developed and it's available for your users. Now, there's a last question there. I'd like to you might like to just keep that in mind, and I'll come to that a little later. So the usage statistics are here. We have been having steady traffic on our platform. The first graph on the top shows you the number of tokens that we have. That's about 200,000 to 300,000 per day. And we have the user queries that are running into around 1,000 per day. Now, could we have taken up when the GeMAI, landed up at our doorstep? Could we have just taken any LLMs and then started, a chatbot with that? Of course not. So the first question that we came to mind was, that is a general context conversational engine, but I do not want any chatbot on my platform to talk about the rest of the world. We need our users to be able to get responses from GEM perspective. And that is why there was a need to architect something that is focused and designed for your specific users. And hence the need to ensure that what you're putting up is tested, it's reliable, it's secure, and it provides what information is being asked. Hence, a little bit about this diagram. So if you see here, you have the LLM context, which is on the top, which provides basically understanding of the language and a response which any LLM might give. But what is most important is the knowledge base that we have crafted at the bottom. And that has been carefully curated by us to ensure that only GEM perspective and GEM limited information is available. And hence, when a user comes and types a query, he will get a response that is pertaining to the government e-marketplace. Now, it's not only information, but going by past experience, and we being experts in the field, we also need to ensure that there are no, we should limit the hallucinations, which we are so particular about, and which we have heard so much about. And to add another ring fence or guardrail around that, we also validate the user's inputs, because it's a wide and wild world out there. Anybody could be, trying to game the system or type anything. So we do validations at two interfaces. We screen the user's inputs, and we also ensure that the output that's going is relevant in context and relevant to the query asked by the user. Now, so in case somebody tries to ask political questions or questions or queries which are not relevant to the GEM context, they will not be accepted, and the GEM AI would give a standard response. Now, what is the journey that we have in mind for the GeM AI? That's not just that's not the final version, obviously. We have a roadmap. We intend to put a voice interface where you could interact initially with English or Hindi, and then we intend to make that multilingual through other products available either with the public sector or with the private sector. Then you would also be able to upload screenshots, and that will give you the capability of generating tickets and issue numbers in case somebody has a problem. Now, I can use that to create a ticket and share the ticket number with him, and then later on, probably he wants to know the status. So virtually, what am I doing? I'm trying to completely automate the customer support system for the government e-marketplace. But is that the only use case that we are working on for Gen AI? Certainly not. So we have more problem statements that we are trying to work along with AWS. So this is an example of a mail that I get, my CEO gets every day in the morning. But why does it come in the morning? Because it has a report of what has happened in the last 24 hours of number of orders, transactions, volumes, prices, et cetera, et cetera. But it comes once in a day. Why? Because there's a whole sequence of transformations that one has to do. My database is almost a petabyte size, and there are millions and zillions of items there and rows and records. And just to get something significant and useful for me, it takes the whole night for scripts and crons and batches to run before we can generate a report that's usable early in the morning. But then we ask, why is it not possible to do that at any point of the day? And that's where Gen AI comes in, right? We should be able to provide a solution where the same report can be asked in simple English, in a conversational manner, and to be understood by the system, and a report generated for us. So the quick site and the queue of Amazon are there on which we have worked as a POC, and we will work in the future also. What it needs to do basically is understand what we are asking in simple English. Contextual understanding, generate queries, execute the queries, and give me the report. So I should be able to ask any time during the day. What are the sales happening in the last 6 hours? What are the maximum products sold in the last 12 hours? What are the highest priced item which sold? How many cars were sold on my product? Anything I could be asking, and I should be able to get that response from the system. Now, the advantages that we get from the perspective of AI is that it can read and understand and comprehend such rich amount of data that we have and provide so many kinds of analytics, descriptive, prescriptive, and recommendatory engines. and the known use cases of collision and fraud, because it's so good at pattern detection, and provide us visibility for forecast. We could do demand aggregation using this. We can do forecast. We can plan our budgets better. And this all adds to the enriched information that the leadership has for the strategic planning and for planning the future of the GEM itself. Now, why I've shown this particular diagram here is that when I was doing my doctorate a couple of 3-4 years back, the technology that we are working on can be seen at the left bottom, and it's just 3-4 years back. BERT and Roberta, these embeddings and these transformers we were working on, and look at the explosion of LLMs that we have today on the top right corner. The number of years is so few, and the explosion in the options and the developments have been such huge. So people who ask that, can Gen AI or AI do anything for us? The answer I'd like to say is that 20 years back, when you were doing your banking and financial transactions, you had to walk up to a bank, you had to fill forms. There were so many activities which you used to do by physically going and doing the legwork. Today, that power is available to you on your handset, in your palm. That power has been given to you by technology. So the questions which were asked about technology 20 years back are relevant today for AI and Gen AI also. And we at Government e-Marketplace intend to use this technology for our platform, for our users, and for our partners, and with our partners also. So what do we see in the future? We want to use Gen AI and AI to generate code which is more efficient, which is more secure. It would be also able to evaluate our code. Why can't it create? It will be able to create bids and tenders and help me with my purchase decisions. And maybe if I participated in a bid, it could tell me why and how and where, for what reason did I lose that bid, and probably point to areas where I should focus on so that I make my wins more going forward. So it's a win-win for everyone. And with that, I'd like to thank AWS. This journey began almost a year back when I met Siva, thanks to Pankaj and Shalini. And my ideas, I keep, like somebody talked about dreaming. When you get funny ideas, are ideas enough to go forward? No, you have to have a partner to execute them. So I'd like to thank AWS and Vikas and Sanjay, who have worked with me on this particular project. Thank you very much.
Can we have Pankaj Gupta back on stage once again?
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. Your leadership and vision behind GEM's approach to modernization and adoption of new age technologies like Gen AI is a great example for all of us. We're truly honored to be a part of your journey. Now, moving on, I want to talk about another key element which is required for realizing the vision of Viksit Bharat. It is future workforce or future digital workforce. As part of our commitment to bridge the technology skills requirement and grow the cloud and AI skills, AWS has already trained more than 5.9 million people in India since 2017 on cloud skills. Not just that, we've also launched a new program called AI Ready to provide free AI skills trainings to 2 million people globally by 2025. With that, now anybody with an internet connection and a desire to learn will be able to access these new age technologies. Since we're talking about skilling and education, I want to talk about National Skill Development Corporation or NSDC. We all know Government of India has a mission to skill and upskill more than 400 million people in India. We worked with NSDC to migrate and modernize some of their core applications like Skill Development Management System, or it is called SDMS, accreditation of their 150,000 training centers, or even their internal SAP S/4HANA application on AWS as they were facing scalability and reliability issues. Last year, we also worked with them to build another key application called Skill India Digital Hub, or SIDH. SIDH today is like a one-stop shop, unified platform where learners can take online classes, digital trainings, or even AI-based assessments, enabling lifelong learning for them or their continuous skill development. If you see, Through SIDH, NSDC today is breaking the barriers of traditional classroom-based learning with a more open, collaborative, and personalized learning. Staying on education, I want to talk about another key platform that has made a huge impact on the education sector in our country. It is Samarth eGov. Samarth eGov is an e-governance platform for the higher education institutes in India, built by Delhi University based on open source, open standards, open APIs with a cloud-first approach on AWS. Talking about the software stack, it has more than 40+ software modules from admissions to academics to accountings, and is being used by more than 5,500 higher education institutes in the country with 14.9 million student records. Government has plans to expand its reach to more than 10,000 higher education institutes in the next 12 months. While the numbers are great, but the real value of Samarth lies in its ability to free the bandwidth of students and teachers from administrative tasks and hurdles, and creating a more open, transparent, and digital-first environment. As we talk more about education and skilling, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Prateek Maheswari, who is the chair of India EdTech Consortium and also co-founder of a very exciting EdTech unicorn, Physics Wallah, that is democratizing the access to quality education in India. Alexa, can we have Mr. Prateek on the stage?
Please help me welcome to the stage Prateek Maheswari, co-founder of Physics Wallah.
Hello everyone. Myself Prateek. I'm co-founder at Physics Wallah. I take care of growth and technology at Physics Wallah. I'll be using English as a mode of communication because that's the language we use in all our lectures. So, Physics Wallah, those all all who know us, we had a very humble beginning. Alak is my partner. अलग की भी अमेजिंग सी स्टोरी है जब ये 11th और 12th ग्रेड में थे तब ये कभी भी फॉर्मली कोचिंग के अंदर पढ़ाई नहीं कर पाए सो दैट्स वेयर ही एक्चुअली हैड दिस फीलिंग कि यार मैं कभी फॉर्मली आईआईटी की तैयारी नहीं कर पाया बट आई विल स्टार्ट मेकिंग द नेक्स्ट जनरेशन स्टूडेंट्स उनको मैं पढ़ाऊँगा ही इज़ अ कॉलेज ड्रॉप आउट और वी हैव अ चाइनीज़ बैम्बू स्टोरी 2016 में ही स्टार्टेड टीचिंग फ्री ऑन यूट्यूब till 2016 से 20 तक he was teaching for free on YouTube, build a community of 25 lakh students, and I was building a SaaS product company back then with the name of Pen Pencil. We used to digitalize educators with our technology platform, a SaaS product platform. And 2020, in mid of COVID, we came together and launched Physics Wallah mobile application. So we were born out of COVID. कोविड में जब सारे बच्चे लॉकडाउन के अंदर वर फोर्स्ड टू स्टडी ऑनलाइन एट द सेम टाइम वी थॉट कि व्हाई डोंट वी कम अप विद द अफोर्डेबल लर्निंग सोल्यूशन अफोर्डेबल लर्निंग सोल्यूशन जो कि बच्चों को हाईएस्ट क्वालिटी के साथ में मोस्ट एंगेजिंग वे के अंदर घर बैठ के पढ़ा सके सो हमारी जर्नी स्टार्ट हुई विद अ ग्रेट क्रैश तो हमारा फर्स्ट लेक्चर लॉन्च ऑफ द एप्लीकेशन वॉज क्रैश्ड एंड जर्नी के स्टार्टिंग के अंदर ही वी वर इंट्रोड्यूस टू अमेजॉन AWS एंड वो भी एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सी स्टोरी है बिकॉज वी वांटेड टू लॉन्च अ वेरी अफोर्डेबल कोर्स वी पोजिशन आवर कोर्स एट 1,000 rupees 1,000 rupees of a course where 250 hours of live lecture where daily practice sheets for the entire year एंड हमें तब पता नहीं था कि यार प्राइसिंग कैसे वर्क करेगी मतलब हमारे सर्वर्स के बिल कैसे आएंगे तो मेरे एक फ्रेंड ने मुझे बताया कि यार अमेजोन का क्रेडिट स्कीम है एटलीस्ट तुम्हें 1000 क्रेडिट्स तो मिल जाएंगे बाकी फिर तुम आगे से फिगर आउट कर लेना सो दैट्स हाउ वी एनकाउंटर्ड विद द AWS एंड आई एम थैंकफुल फॉर दैट क्रेडिट स्कीम यू शुड डबल डाउन ऑन दैट स्कीम एंड लॉट ऑफ बडिंग एंटरप्रेन्योर्स सिर्फ इसीलिए आ जाते हैं कि यार यहाँ पे $1,000 के क्रेडिट्स मिल रहे हैं so that's how we started and as we speak today it's been 4 years since we have started. Currently, we have 50 million free users on our platform, 5 million paid users on our platform. We have physical presence as well in 105 cities with 150 centers. more than 2 lakh students in our offline mode of learning. But what makes us special is our cost of delivery. Like, we teach the entire physics, chemistry, maths, biology in 4,000 rupees for entire year of the student's preparation. That price used to be 20 times more in other edtech platforms, and and 30 times more in other offline mode of learning. So that's why 30% of our students are from economic weaker section. Because we started with the vision that we want to empower the middle and the bottom of the pyramid. As we speak, this year we have created more than 500 doctors and IITians who are the first doctors and IITians of their villages. So I think this deserves a round of applause. And we believe, girl child education is a big problem in India. And currently, out of 766 districts of India, we have 605 districts where we have covering girl child education. So this is where we are today. I often ask, how come we are so affordable and yet profitable and yet growing at a very rapid rate? So we started with this vision to make education affordable, but then it turned out in a great business model. Everyone, when we started, was trying to target the top 5-10% of the India. And 80% of the India was just filling up examination form. They never had the access of a good quality teacher. So, that is the real Bharat, जहाँ पर mass market exists करता है. तो हमने 80% of India को भी focus किया, top 5-10% of India पे हमारा focus नहीं था, but eventually ये हुआ कि जो बच्चे afford कर सकते थे, वो students भी हमको back pocket course की तरह लेने लग गए. तो we eventually covered the entire pie. Second thing is I talked about the price disruption. Price disruption is easy. Anyone can disrupt the price. But what was more important is we created a large community of students and created India's mega classrooms. Where 50,000 to 2.5 lakh students are studying together in one single classrooms. This couldn't have been possible without the help of Amazon. We started with जब हमने तो सिर्फ credit के interest से start किया था, but later on we realized कि to run this mega classrooms with the seamless experience, it is very important to have a very good technology partner with you. So our classrooms has AI doubt solver, 3D models, sentiment analysis. There is live poll teacher can throw. It has it is not a classroom. It's like a performing arts. Teacher go and perform in this classroom. Because 50,000 students are studying together. It is a very different experience. And one thing which we are very proud of, we are academics first company, and we focus a lot on results. As we speak, this year we have produced more than 22,000 doctors and 3,600 engineers. Engineers, when I say, top tier colleges we have sent students. So this is the story so far. I wanted to quickly touch upon some of the new things, new innovations which we are doing. So one thing is. So far, we had always this problem that since we run these mega classrooms, it was always difficult to personalize the students' education journey. That's where we have launched AI Guru, in the suite of Alakh AI product series. And this product has been most used AI product, in India. And we have 1.2 million doubts being solved by AI Guru on a monthly basis, and this is freely available for all our student base. It's not just solves the doubt, but even make customized learning path, personalized learning path for the students. So AI Guru, you can go and check on Physics Wallah mobile application. It is it's most loved product, most loved AI product by students. Similarly, second thing which we are working on, an AI box. It's a very affordable device which we are making, and we will be deploying this device in affordable private schools, and it will become a household device as well. With this device, students can play video without internet. and along with that, with the help of internet, AI tutor will help them clearing their doubts and and help them clearing their concepts as well. So this is a very, very affordable device which we are currently making to make even education more accessible and distraction free. Along with this, we have a huge mission for PW skills. We believe that a forward integration for the students has to be solved. India is sitting on a huge youth, huge youth population, and we want to give them right skills, and there's a huge huge mismatch between what industry needs and what current college ecosystem is providing. So for that, we have launched PW Skills, and we have School of Healthcare, Banking and Finance, Business Technology, and Tech courses in PW Skills. Finzi is a new product, which will empower students with academic loans. So there is no model in India which gives loans to the students on academic ability. So that's where, sometimes जो प्रॉब्लम मनी से सॉल्व हो सकती है वो मनी से ही सॉल्व हो सकती है, तो एकेडमिक एबिलिटी के अंदर तो हमने काफ़ी स्टूडेंट्स को एम्पावर कर दिया है, बट दैट्स वे वी आर लॉन्चिंग फिंजी योगी। उसके अंदर एक इम्पैक्ट फाइनेंसिंग वर्टिकल है जो कि मोबाइल फ़ोन इंक्लूजन कंट्री में बढ़ाएगा, जो कि फीमेल गर्ल चाइल्ड जिनको मोबाइल फ़ोन एक्सेस नहीं होता है उस पर काम करेगा, और ईजी पे इस एकेडमिक एबिलिटी के ऊपर स्टूडेंट्स को लोन हम देना चाहते हैं। PW Foundation is इसके अंदर हम स्कूल ऑफ स्टार्टअप्स, अफोर्डेबल प्राइवेट स्कूल्स वे वी डोंट चार्ज एनीथिंग फ्रॉम द स्टूडेंट्स, और PW प्रेरणा जो कि स्टूडेंट्स की मेंटल वेलबींग के लिए हमने एक प्रोडक्ट डिज़ाइन किया है। इसके अंदर हम PW Foundation which is not for profit initiative we are doing. Along with this, I want to quickly touch upon a couple of our impact stories, which will give you idea कि किस तरह के बच्चों को हम पढ़ा रहे हैं और किस तरह के इंडिया के साथ में हम काम कर रहे हैं। So Sunny is a samosa seller. He's in sector Noida, sector 12, 4 kilometers away from our office. He used to go to school. उसके बाद आकर के अपने पापा के साथ में ये समोसे बेचता था, और he got cleared NEET this year. Along with that, Gagan used to deliver gas cylinders, 250 gas cylinders in a day he used to deliver, or he used to earn 350 rupees through that. Or now he have cleared IIT with 5,000 odd rank, and he got seat in IIT BHU, which is my alma mater. श्रृंगार की स्टोरी श्रृंगार की स्टोरी तो बहुत ही टची थी। तो श्रृंगार के फादर ने घर इसलिए छोड़ दिया था बिकॉज ही वॉज नॉट एबल टू मीट द फाइनेंशियल expectation of the family, and post that her mother used to sell momos at roadside in Gurgaon, और ये मदर को हेल्प करती थी। इनके घर पे जब हमारी टीम गई तो इनके घर में गेट ही नहीं था, क्योंकि जब घर तो था ही नहीं, मतलब कमरा ही था। तो जब घर बनाने लगे तो गेट बनाने के पैसे ही नहीं बचे, तो लेकिन दोनों मदर डॉटर सिर्फ एक कमरे से रह करके मोमोज सेल करते थे, और शी गॉट क्लियर नीड। अमेजिंग स्टोरी। Dolly, a family of 8 people used to live in one room. वहाँ से बस ड्राइवर्स डॉटर ने जो है नीट का एग्जाम क्लियर किया। रूबी को 2 बार टीबी हो गया था, इसका यंगर ब्रदर को ऑटिज्म था, so that's why she wanted to pursue NEET as a career, और currently she is studying in top premium college of India. Umar was a painter from Anantnag, one of the remotest village of India, और वहाँ से he used to paint in daytime, he used to study in night time. वहाँ से उमर ने NEET का एग्जामिनेशन क्रैक किया, and currently is studying in Government Medical College of Jammu. Amazing. So इन सारी stories के अंदर I believe कि is fire in their belly. We have been teaching the same content to the entire cohort of the students, but it is hard work of these students. We are just an enabler. And at the same time, I wanted to thank Amazon, because इन सारी stories के अंदर जो seamless experience हम students को deliver कर पाते हैं, वो because of AWS, and students का data protection हो या फिर cost effective scaling हो. Like, you know, we are quite thankful for all the contribution. जब भी हम team से बात करते हैं, be it Pankaj, be it Shalini ma'am, Amir, so they seems to be more concerned about our cost as compared to my team. So मुझे लगता है कि like, you know, that's the culture you guys have built, and thank you so much for all your contribution.
Can we have Pankaj Gupta back on stage once again?
Prateek. As always, that was very inspiring and impactful. We are really privileged to partner with Physics Wallah as part of your digital transformation journey. Now, as India takes center stage to shared prosperity and global cooperation, I want to talk about AWS commitment to sustainability. As per the recent study by Accenture, AWS infrastructure is 4.1 times more energy efficient than on-premise infrastructure. And when customer workloads are optimized on AWS, the associated carbon footprint can be reduced by 99%. Isn't that amazing? Talking about climate pledge, we aim to be net zero carbon emission by 2040, that is 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement, by investing in renewable energy. Not just that, in 2019, Amazon set a goal to power all our global operations, our data centers, our corporate buildings with 100% renewable energy by 2030. And in July 2024, we announced we've already achieved that goal 7 years ahead of the schedule. With that, Amazon continues to be the largest single purchaser of renewable energy in the world. We all know water is a scarce resource. We are looking at becoming water positive by 2030. That means we will be returning more water to the communities than we consume in our direct operations. Through our water stewardship program, we've already returned more than 3.9 billion liters of water to the communities where we operate from our various replenishment projects completed or underway. Now, as you leave here today, I want you to feel empowered. Empowered to be the pioneers, empowered to be the trailblazers, the visionaries who will shape the future of technology and help build India into a digitally transformed nation, a Viksit Bharat by 2047. But before we call it a wrap, I would like to take the opportunity to call Dr. Werner once again on the stage, along with our esteemed guests, Dr. Pankaj and Mr. Prateek, for the felicitation ceremony. Present the tokens of appreciation, please.
Thank you very much for being here. Amazing story, by the way. In general, I think what I've seen in the past week is an amazing attempt or amazing success by the Indian government to actually be able to execute very large programs and be successful at the same time, and really raise the whole platform for everybody to be successful in. And you guys play a very important role into that. Congratulations.
I must also say, you know, AWS partners and the way it contributes towards the customer's journey is also amazing.
Okay.
So you have an amazing team here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you, Prateek.
Education is crucial. Lifting the platform for everyone to become successful. And I can't think about sort of better congratulations than to you and the work that you've been doing. Thank you very much.
With that, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening.